Welcome to Coffee and Closers. I'm Nikolai Bedore, and I want to personally invite you to join me and one of today's top performing sales stars for a cup of coffee and authentic conversation. And our collective goal is that you will walk away with tangible knowledge that you can apply to your sales efforts today. Are you ready? Grab a cup, fill it up, and let's get into another episode of Coffee and Closers. Closers, welcome to another episode of Coffee and Closers. We are very glad you're here. Sales is a skill. It's something that we all need to know. And so in my opinion, why not do it well, right? All right, so let's dive in. For those of you that I have not met, my name is Nikolai Bedore. I am the host of this Coffee and Closers and the Chief Revenue Officer of Closers Media. So what does Closers Media do? So we've kind of designed and built this around a mission to help those new to sales, founders, teams, new to leadership, the next up. And what we wanted to do is design a platform and a resource that those people could depend on to provide that confidence that's necessary in continuous sales success. We found that sales is uncomfortable to a lot of those folks, so we want to make it comfortable, and we want to teach via training, hands-on training, coaching, mentorship in a hands-on way to not only provide a comfortable learning environment, but also that repetitive retention to be successful long-term. What we do is we leverage timeless principles that we've all practiced for the last 15 years, kept us in the top 1 to 3%. We've mastered over the years, and now and the tips and the tricks that we learn month after month from the fantastic people that we have on the show. People like this, people on the show that you're about to hear from. So if that sounds interesting, check us out at closersmedia.com. Now, speaking of today's guest, he doesn't know this, but he's had a massive impact on my entrepreneurship and sales life. His former agency, Elastic Sales, was the inspiration behind my agency, BBG. He's the CEO of Close.com, a CRM that actually salespeople want to use, focus on sales performance. He's been featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, Hubspot, hell, you name it, he's been in it. And in my opinion, to me, he is the GOAT in regards to quality, tactical, tangible, real sales content that we can really use and apply. And especially considering his volume, it's incredible. So closers, please give a massive Coffee and Closers welcome to Mr. Steli Efti.
Boom. Thank you.
There he is.
What an intro.
Well, sorry to blast so much sunshine up your ass, but it's just been pent up for all these years. So thanks for coming on.
There you go. Now I'm after the overpromise. All that's left to me is to underdeliver.
Not a chance, man. Not a chance. So you know this, and we just talked about it. But Coffee and Closers, we celebrate the star, not so much the company, but the star. We talk about success, failure. Before we do, man, you got to share your story. True, like sales saved my life kind of story. So if you don't mind, take a couple minutes and tell us about that story and how sales impacted your life.
Yeah, I mean, people often ask me, how did you decide, Steli, to become a serial entrepreneur in life? Like, how did you choose this path? And I always tell them the truth, lack of options, right? I barely made it through kindergarten. I had a very difficult time at school. I come from a immigrant factory worker family, lived public housing, and nobody in my family had ever received a high education. And very early on in school, I realized that I would keep that family tradition alive. And so when I stumbled over this thing called entrepreneurship, and I realized, wait a second, anybody can start a business? Like, it doesn't matter like what his or her background is. I don't need a degree to do it. And I could make that business as large as I'm capable of. There's no limitation because of how many degrees I have or what my name sounds like or where I live. That's when I realized, all right, this is it. I've been looking for this answer to the question, how will I find success in life? It was entrepreneurship. At least it looked like it. When I dropped out of school to start my first business, since then, what's really driven any type of success I've been able to accumulate has always been my ability to communicate in a result-driven way, to make people want to do things, purchase my product, join my companies, work for me and with me, promote, market what I do. Like, it's always been sales. That's been kind of my entrepreneurial superpower. But I didn't know that in the beginning, right? All I knew was that I was like hustling as much as I could and trying my hardest to move kind of my agenda and my projects forward. But I remember distinctly there was was one moment I had where I realized, oh, what I'm doing is called selling, and I am good at this. I could become really, really great at this. And that was I'd started, I won't even go into the detail. I started doing some level like consulting people on their stock investments. Don't laugh at me. I'm like 18 years, 19 years old. Don't even ask
awesome.
how and why. Just like, let's just ignore all that, for a second. Like I read 100 books and I thought I was an expert. And I remember meeting somebody that was telling me, oh, you need to read sales books. You need to get good at selling if you're doing consulting and anything like that. And I started picking up some sales books and I was like, oh, this kind of sounds cool. This makes sense. This is part of what I'm doing. I just didn't realize it's called sales. And I remember the first, I had an appointment once that came through a recommendation. And I drive to these people's home. I would go and meet people at their home. And when I arrived there, I realized it was a farm. And this is the south of Germany. It's a very conservative part of Germany. And I'm 18 years old. I have gel in my hair. I have 2 earrings.
Yes.
I do not look trustworthy at all. I'm not a farm-friendly type kid. And I remember I parked there and I was like, I looked in the rearview mirror and I thought, this is not gonna go well. It's just gonna be terrible. But I was like, well, we'll suck it up and go and have this terrible appointment, right? Just go through with it. What can you do right now?
Right.
I remember and these people they had a horse farm, a whole bunch of stuff that they were doing that I had no clue about and could not relate to. And I walked into the house and they were like mid 50s. I'm like, oh God, this is just not going to work at all. And I chit-chatted with them a little bit. And 30 minutes later, they invited me to dinner. And I'm having dinner with them and we're talking about life and this, that, the other. And everybody's laughing and I'm becoming part of the family. And at the very end, like I realized we've been talking for 2.5 hours. We've not talked about the topic that I came here for at all. And they say, oh, it's really late. We realized you wanted to look at our stock investments and our financial situation. Here are all our folders of all our bank statements, everything. Just take it with you. We trust you and come back and tell us what to do, right? And I remember when I went back to my shitty car, I throw all the stuff into the trunk and I sit back into the car and I look at the rear view mirror. This sounds like it happened in a movie, but I remember that moment distinctly. I looked in the mirror and I was like, I'm good at this shit. Like I can do this. I'm really fucking good at this. And the thing that I realized that I was good at that time was people trust me and they can relate to me like I can relate to people. I'm like, I can connect with almost anybody and they trust me. Like they can trust, and that's really powerful. Like I can do things with this. Like if I don't mistreat it and misuse it, I can do some powerful shit with this ability. And that was the moment where I realized I could be good at selling. Like sales is something that if I learn it, if I hone it, if I invest in that skill, it could be a real superpower that will aid me in anything that I'll do in life. And nothing could be further from the truth. That was a good realization that has paid very, very big dividends.
That's awesome. I was waiting to hear the part where you're like, and then I went and bought 2 more really big earrings, but that never happened.
No, that never happened. I actually moved on, like slowly but surely my look transitioned into just slightly more, less, I don't know, teenager, less than teenager, a bit more serious.
Buddy, the slick back hair that I had this visual. So I thanks for that story. That's great. Yes. So I have my opinions on a superpower that you have, but I want to hear it from you. You talked about sales as a superpower, but like every salesperson within that bucket of sales has a superpower. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, we're X-Men, right? So we're superheroes, but within that superhero, I have claws or laser eyes or whatever the hell, you know what I mean? My superpower when it comes to the sales process is really strong in pocket prospecting, like leveraging third-party proof, and then in qualifying to know. That would be like, if you were to say what's your X-Men superpower, that would be it. What do you think yours is specifically, and then how can you teach us what you know about it?
So that's a good question. I don't know. So I think that for me, I think early on I realized that sales, and now I think about anything in those terms, but early on I realized that sales is really a game that's played between the ears, right? This is, I think, Boris Becker quote or some famous tennis player quote of like it's an inner game. Like you first, if I'm not sold, I cannot sell you, right? If I'm not convinced, I can't convince other people. And convincing myself, selling myself is the toughest sale, right? Getting myself to truly know who I am, what I do, and to be comfortable and confident enough to go out there and listen carefully to others, because I don't have the nervousness of being in my own head. I already know what I'm trying to do and why, so I can be fully with you, pay attention, listen, learn. And once I realize that I can help you and you can help me, then having the confidence to tell, not ask anymore, like to actually tell people, I know what we need to do here, and these are the steps, and it's beyond a doubt that we're going to take them. I think that confidence is what has helped me, accomplish things in selling that maybe have been unique or very, very difficult for others to accomplish. But I think I've always focused and leaned on first negotiating with myself every day, first closing myself every morning on what I needed to do and why, on selling myself on the importance of honesty, like just not just being honest with others, but being honest with myself and paying attention to what is going on in this interaction that I have, what went right and what went wrong and why, and what needs to happen next. How do I need to adjust? And so learning not to fight reality, but to embrace it, to work with it. A lot of times, selling is not really difficult. It's not complex. It is emotionally very challenging, but it's not a complicated thing. It's very simple. But it is our humanity, our emotions, our fears that make this very rough waters and make this kind of super complicated to navigate. But if you're able to like manage your internal states and your internal psyche, it becomes much, smooth sailing, much simpler, much clearer lines from point A to point B, less confusing, less troublesome. So I think realizing that early and being very self-aware, self-analytical in ways that didn't overwhelm me, but in ways that helped me oftentimes to create clarity and a vision for what needed to happen next and how to accomplish it. I think that really helped. And then people have, I think it's what stayed true is that I've always had a natural way to relate to others and make them relate to me. And people always trusted me. And trusted me with things they'd never trusted anybody else before. The amount of, when I did this the first time where people said, here are all our personal financial information, just take them with you. That happened once. And then it was standard procedure. I would just tell people, I can go through all your stuff here and you look at, I just take it with me. And then what became, and this, I was too young, in hindsight, I wouldn't do this anymore. But then what became standard procedure is that I would have people regularly sign blank contracts. They would sign the contract without filling out all the details. And I'd be like, you sign it and I'll have my assistant fill out all the information. We don't have to sit through this for 30 minutes and do this together. So people just give me their blank signatures. Now, I was brought up with good ethics. I have an amazing mother, right? And so I never took advantage of this. I never mistreated somebody or took advantage of that trust. But in hindsight, I'm like, first of all, today I would not even ask for that. Even if people wanted to give me that, it would freak me out. I'd be like, no, don't do this. That's not a good idea in life. Don't do this. But now I think back and I'm like, it's amazing the kind of people that would just blank signature and here's all our original paperwork of all our contracts. And that's that. I don't know how I did that. I never studied how to build trust. People just trusted me.
It's funny because I told you we do the coaching and the whatever, and I've gotten we get interviewed a lot, and we've become the pillar of sales can be taught. But the one thing we always say is, I can't, if you don't run the plays, they don't work. I also can't teach you to be a good person, right? I can't, that we can't teach. And Steli, so we talked about content and copy, and I think, and I planted a seed earlier about your superpower. Something that you just verified for me, and something that I think I've always appreciated, and I really want for the world to hear is, that empathy, that authenticity, you're impossible not to trust. You know what I mean? But the thing is that it comes across in all the time that you spend crafting all this content out there. You've put so much content out there, and I've always wanted to have this conversation, because to me it feels like that's telling the world how authentic and how much you care. You know what I mean? which then reflects to that story. Case in point, you had an article that really resonated with me, probably resonated with a lot of people, because in sales, we're hearing no's all the time. We have no authority, yet we're always pinned with the highest quota and the most stress. And I know that this didn't have to do with that, but for all of our listeners, the article was on anger. And you shared with the rest of us that this is something that you struggle with. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the anger samurai, and go as deep or shallow as you wish, but maybe then position it on how you channel your anger to use it for fuel on your fire.
Yeah, this was a podcast that I released, and then I wrote about it on LinkedIn. That was about a story that I told my son. So I have 2 sons, and every day, without fail, they give me a bunch of words, and then I come up with a new bedtime story for them, right? And
Awesome.
Even when I travel, they'll send me the words via WhatsApp, via their mom, and then I'll record a voice message of a new story. And so I'm the chief storyteller at home, and my oldest is very much like me. He looks as pretty as his mom, but he has like my character and like my personality. So he's he's just born with ambition pouring out of every pore of his being, and he just can't help it. And his mom had an issue with him for a couple of weeks as I was traveling. She was telling me that he had all these like anger issues, just like really lashing out on her and his younger brother, and in school having issues and just like getting super angry. And so she wanted me to tell a story that had to do with anger, right? And so I recorded this story about an angry samurai. My son at that point was also a huge like fan of anything fighting related. So like a samurai would draw him in. And the basic premise of the story was basically of this young samurai that became a really good fighter and a really good swordsman, and very strong and very kind of prideful in his skills and in the admiration that people had for him. And one day gets into a fight, and because he got angry as how the fight was panning out, he lashed out on a person a bit too hard and realized that people were looking at him like the bad guy all of a sudden. And that then made him even angrier, because now he didn't get admired, he got judged by others. So he started fighting some more people in that village that had told him that he was a bully and that he went too far. And that led to him being chased out of the village, and then him becoming an outlaw and people looking for him. And I then tell about him becoming like one of the bad samurais of the country, like a Ronin walking around and for a little bit of money just like killing people and doing all kinds of assassinations. And then there's this new coming up fighter, in samurai that wants to kill or catch the old guy for the emperor to make his name off of it. I won't bore you with the details, but eventually he captures the old samurai, and on his way to the emperor, he's like, basically telling him like, hey, what happened to you? You were such a great young samurai. People thought you were the best. You're such an amazing, you have all these skills, all these powers. How did you turn bad? Like, what made you become a bad person? And the samurai recounts that one moment, that one bad decision that he made where it went a bit too far because he was angry, and how that led to another decision that was him pushing it a bit too far. And that led to another decision. And he said, eventually everybody thought of me as a bad guy, so I just lived the life of a bad person. I just adjusted to that, and no matter how much you master the sword, if you don't master yourself, you might kill yourself and your life by making bad decisions because you're too angry and you use that power in a bad way. So long story short, or shorter, it was not really short. I think that what my oldest is going through sometimes, and what I could relate to, is this, this pride or this need to be great and to get admired and to look good in front of others. That need, that which is driving you forward and propelling you to take risks and learn things and accomplish things, that can also be a big vulnerability, because when you don't get that, you're more insecure, you might lash out, you might get angry at yourself and the world for not accomplishing this thing. And anger, if you don't channel it, can be something that's your downfall, right? It can lead to really bad actions and really bad, harmful and hurtful things. Now, I made, I was a very angry, ragey little shit as a kid. I had have a bit of a difficult life growing up. Lots of bad things happened to us in unfortunate ways, but I was very angry at the world. And that anger drove me forward. But eventually that anger made me hurt people, right? And be hurtful to others and myself. And because I was raised by an angel of a mother, I was like, I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to hurt other people. I don't like when I'm this way. And so then I swung the other extreme for most of my life, which is I completely suppressed my anger until the point where I was like, I'm never angry. Why am I never angry? How is this happening? How did I do this? And only in the last 2 years did I rediscover that it's not that I'm never angry, it's that I just suppress my anger. And now I've just started to learn what I find to be the right balance when it comes to this negative emotion as well as all others, which is you don't want it to run your life and be a victim to it. That's true. But you also don't want to run away from it your whole life and pretend it doesn't exist. That's equally bad of a strategy, right? The right way to deal with this is to notice when you're angry, to accept and be present for it. Wow, look, something inside of me is exploding right now. I'm gonna feel it fully. I'm gonna like also the courageous thing is not running away from it, right? Just like it's childish to just be consumed by it. Like the really courageous thing is to stand in front of anger and just be present. Just be like, I get it. I hear you. I feel you. You have a right for existence. I'm so strong. I can be here for it. And then once I fully experience my anger, now I can ask myself, where will we channel this energy towards? Because it's energy. It's massive human energy. What can I use this energy for? To build things, to solve problems, to recognize something about myself that's driving this anger, to make a decision, to instead of letting that energy destroy things, I will let it build things and create things. But first and foremost, I have to be present for it. And this is something I'm just learning now myself. I didn't know for many, many years. I just suppressed it. I'd so mastered this skill of never being angry anymore and never feeling my anger that I was like, this is also weird. I'm this robot that never feels angry or pissed. Like, how is that possible? And so today I'm at this point of the journey. I don't know. It's still early days. I'm still learning and figuring this out. But I think anger is one of these things, especially if you're putting yourself out there, as we all do when we're selling. We're putting a little bit of us on display on the table. We say, I'm going to ask this question and you can reject me. And I'm going to be getting a lot more rejection than most people are used to and comfortable with. And rejection never feels good. No matter how much of a black belt sales ninja you are, it never feels good. You just learn maybe to deal with that pain a little bit better, but you still, as a human being, fundamentally, you don't want to be rejected, right? Because we all interpret rejection as not being worthy of love, right? You're not worth to being loved in this moment. It sucks. It doesn't feel good to anyone. And so I think as somebody in sales, as somebody that puts themselves out there all the time and is being rejected all the time, I think learning to accept that you are going to get angry, and anger is actually a much more powerful emotion than being depressed, right? If somebody tells me no and I feel like all crushed inside, it's taking away all my power, right? It makes me very fearful. It takes all away my power. But if I get angry, at least I feel a bit powerful, right? I feel like I have energy. I could do something. I could destroy an enemy or whatever. So learn to feel that energy when it comes up, and then to use it to build things, to create things, to grow from it and with it, versus run away from it or let it ride you into all kinds of trouble that it might do. So that's a bit of the backstory on the anger post.
I love it, man, and I love that, and I know that we're cut short, so I want to be respectful. For us, the biggest discovery I ever found was how to turn no's into market intel, free market intel. You know what I mean? Because I that used to piss me off too. I'm like, I have something that you need, and I know this because I've done all this research, and you won't even give me the time of day, and I used to get angry about it. And so you start realizing, what are they saying no to? That's how I channeled. So thanks for sharing that story. I know it's personal, and I know that people listening right now are being like, that sounds like me. Because this is a hard gig sometimes. You know what I mean? It's a real hard gig. It's thankless. But the exchange is, you can have a life that no one else has, because it's unlimited. So the give and the take. With that, closers, there you have it. Seriously, a bucket list for me. Thank you, Steli. Closers, make sure that you reach out to Steli, make sure that you support him. And speaking of, how does the closers community support you?
So I think that the thing that gets me most excited is when all the work that I've put into the world is helpful, useful to others. So if somebody here listens today and says, hey, maybe I want to learn more about selling from that dude, right? Not just his anger management issues. You could just send me an email, steli@close.com. Just say bundle. And what I'll do is I'll send you my 10 books all for free. And so you can get all kinds of sales knowledge, practical and tactical, then put it to use and then report back. Hey, I did this thing you said and it worked. Or I did this thing you said and didn't work. What now, right? Like, I love it all. Like, I want to hear from anyone, but if I can teach anyone anything useful that they put into real world use and get value out of it, that gets me up in the morning, that gets me excited. Besides that, you can follow me on Twitter @Steli. You can follow my podcast. I have a podcast with my dear friend and co-host Heaton Shah, The Startup Chat. Or for those that are more into the inner side of psychology and what we do, I have a new podcast, which is the one that I talked about the Angry Samurai on, which is called Inner Work with Steli Efti. Check that stuff out. And let me know how I can continue to be useful and helpful.
And closers, in this chat, if you're listening to this live, we'll put it in there so that you guys can have easy access. And if you're listening at home on the podcast, just reach out to us at closersmedia.com and we'll try and hook you up. Thank you, Steli. Closers, give Steli a big round of applause. This was amazing. I really appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming on. And I know we're in between deals. I think you got a deal that you got to go handle after this. So appreciate you squeezing us in, man.
Hey, thank you so much. It was an honor and pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Cheers. All right. So what do we think? What'd you learn? Well, if you like that, check out coffeeclosers.com for upcoming episodes, recordings, and more. And don't forget to check out our sponsors. Each one has been hand-selected. They're best in class. Until next time, we'll see you at the next Coffee and Closers. Cheers.
Say live, come on, live a life we love. Gotta live, I said live a life we love.